Welcome to In an Instant. My name is Ben, and today I am very proud and honored to present to you an interview by one of the foremost legends in the film industry. Yes, the Robert Shanebrook. This is a man who was hired at age 21 in 1969 to work at Kodak on a little thing called Apollo 11. Cameras that he worked on from Apollo 11 to Apollo 15 that remain on the moon today. After that little gig, he went on to manage the commercialization, design, and production of some of the most amazing films in history, including Kodachrome, Ektachrome, many black and white stocks, Vericolor, the precursor to Portra, and is essentially one of the foremost experts in the world on film. And it was unbelievable getting to sit down with him and have this interview. He literally wrote the book on film, Making Kodak Film, which is available now on his website. Mr. Shanebrook was kind enough to have us over to his home nearby where Kodak still produces film today, and we sat outside on a beautiful fall day and talked some film. Who doesn't love that? Without further ado, I present to you our interview with Robert Shanebrook.
The kind of photography that would become part of the human being. Press a button and have the picture.
Okay, Robert, first of all, it's an honor to have you on the program.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, you're one of the GOATs. Do you know what GOAT is?
No.
Greatest of all time.
Hardly.
That's what we say.
Hardly.
No, for real. So, in lieu of that, and in lieu of this leaf, let's go back to the beginning. So, I want to know a little bit more about this Apollo camera that you worked on, because I studied astronomy in college. It's of particular interest, and Kodak's involvement with NASA is very interesting to me. And this happened to you right away. This is like the beginning of your career. So walk me through what that was.
Well, it's the opposite of astronomy. We only photographed an area that was about 3 inches square in stereo.
Still astronomy.
Astronomy, micro
It's microastronomy.
Microastronomy or macroastronomy. There's a guy named Goldie, I don't recall exactly, who taught at Cornell, who had this idea. He was a PhD astronomy professor at Cornell, that he wanted to get more information on what the surface was like. He was involved in getting rocks back, but when they landed, there was really not a good understanding of what the surface was like. And we had to build a device that the astronauts could use while walking around in a spacesuit.
Right.
They couldn't bend down, and if they dropped it, they couldn't pick it up. So it had a little strobe built in it, and it exposed Ektachrome's, an Ektachrome 64 was MS was the code for the film.
Emotionally, what were you going through at this point? I mean, this to me sounds incredible. You're playing it off as if it was like no big deal. This is Apollo 11, right? I mean,
yeah, but you know, we could get anything done we wanted because it was for the Apollo. All you have to say it was for the Apollo. You go in the machine shop and say you need something done, and people fall over themselves.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, you know, you were going to the moon yourself.
No, but you touched something that's on the moon.
And I touched all the cameras that went to the moon.
You went like this after?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I actually used them.
Right.
We couldn't tell anybody what we did until into the 2000s.
Wow.
And
That's wild.
then we could only tell them what we did up to 1989, I think.
Do you still have any classified information in your head that you're sitting on?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, but I can't tell anybody.
Well, we'll see what happens.
So I can only go up, we can only talk about what happened into like 1889, because that was the end of film retrieval satellites.
Right.
After that, they went to some other imaging systems, which
Wow.
we can't talk about.
That is unbelievable. We can't talk about it on the show as much as we want to. I want you to walk us through just your career overall. Give us like a roadmap of how you started Kodak, ended up writing your book.
I worked for Kodak for 2 summers as a photographer, shooting basically 8x10 studio work and doing some processing. And before that, I had actually done color processing for a commercial photographer. And I was a photographer in Syracuse when I was in high school. I was shooting color neg in 1963 and processing and printing it. I worked for Kodak for two summers while I was going to RIT. And then I was hired to work on with now declassified spy satellites.
Yeah.
But the spy satellite program called Man Orbiting Laboratory was canceled about the time that I started at Kodak. So I then worked on a camera that went to the moon on Apollo 11. I was
no
hired.
big deal.
Interesting, we had a 50-year reunion of all the people that worked on the camera, and I was the only one that was still alive.
Are you serious?
This is on the 50th anniversary.
Well, you were
of the lunar
21, I
landing.
mean, right?
Yeah, I was 21.
That's crazy.
And everybody else was an experienced person, so they were all probably
Right.
20 or 25 years older than me. But it was kind of disappointing that I was expecting to see people I had worked
Yeah.
with. But so I worked there. Then I worked in Kodak Apparatus Division Research Laboratory. One of my lab mates was Steve Sasson, who invented the digital camera. And then I moved to the film world. The first thing I worked on was a fancy heat processable microfilm. And then I worked on low silver X-ray films, and that evolved into T-Max film. And then I switched to Ektachrome and Kodachrome. And then later I switched to color negative films. Then I retired. Before I retired, I asked if I could document the film manufacturing process. I was told absolutely not. So I waited 3 years, and then I tried again. And the agreement we came to at that time, around 2006, is I could document it, but I could never publish it. That I could document it, but I would have to give the manuscript and the photographs to Kodak. And that sometime in the future they might release them. Then about 2009, they realized that we were keeping the secrets kind of from each other, that if we had given all the information to the players at the time, were Agfa, Fuji, and Ilford primarily, if we had told them how we did everything, they really wouldn't care, because everyone knew the business was fading away. And they certainly weren't going to retool or reformulate to do anything with anything we told them. So they gave me permission to publish it. I think I started selling books about a month later.
This is the first edition?
That was the first edition, which was only 94 pages. I sold thousands of those.
Wow.
So then I expanded it to about 470 pages and hundreds of more photographs. There's sort of a culture. If you were hired, you worked your entire career, but you learned from the previous people, and part of the obligation of the previous generation is to teach the next generation how to do it. So people's career was divided up into sections. The first section is you basically learn about photography. That's about 5 years. You're really not much good for 5 years. Then for the next 15 or 20 years, you're pretty good, people are good contributors. But the last 5 years, you spend most of your time teaching other people what you know, so that their 5 years and your 5 years go together. So it's, kick the can down the road. What you learned and what you got to work was based on what the previous generation
Essentially
did.
an oral tradition. And to my understanding, departments didn't share that much information, right? So your book is essential for teaching everyone that worked at Kodak for many years what the other guys were doing?
Well, it doesn't give enough detail to build your own factory or formulate
We
yours.
were already in pre-production on that, but that's fine.
It can tell you the fundamentals, but it is a lot of one person telling another. There's no textbooks to look at to speak of.
Okay. So I know you didn't work with Polaroid, but we have a lot of viewers that are specifically interested in this, so I'm just curious about what Polaroid and Kodak's relationship was. And when you arrived, they were on the precipice of an enormous, catastrophic lawsuit that happened like a few years after you got there.
Yeah, I was certainly aware of it, and I was aware of the instant stuff, but I didn't work on it, and they were isolated from us.
Really?
Kodak's real good about keeping secrets. So the instant people were isolated. They were behind locked doors.
Right.
You had to do a pass exchange to get into the area and stuff.
Wow.
And I didn't. Well, the security was based on what we had done for the government stuff.
Yeah.
So we knew how to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
So they were isolated, and it wasn't generally talked about. You knew what they were doing. It's called PR-10.
But when it came to something like Type 55, there was an involvement with a black and white negative that's...
Yeah, Type 55 negative that we made was just as good as aerial film or Tri-X
it's
or any of the other
unbelievable.
films. The physical quality was excellent. And since it looks, you're only going to make a relatively small enlargement, like a 4x5 negative. The quality was not an issue. And we would provide them rolls.
What is your thought on it generally?
Well, it's an easy way to get a negative without having to do much processing. In Japan, it was used to confirm camera sharpness, focus.
Okay, yeah.
They we sold a lot in Japan, but they would look at the negative just for sharpness and then throw the whole package away.
Is it weird to you now that this sort of film is coveted and being used as an artistic canvas? Well,
it was used for that purpose, and also the 8x10 Polaroid was used in a lot of art photography, as well as the 2024. So.
Oh my gosh, we recently shot 2024.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, unbelievable. This guy in Albuquerque built a 20x24 camera.
Yeah.
And using RA4 paper, figured out a way to basically get a color positive through an incredible process. It was amazing. I'll send you the video.
I'd like to see that. That's interesting.
/in an instant. So, yeah, I think you'll get a kick out of it. So fast forward to early 2000s. You're retiring, leaving Kodak, essentially. I mean, the work never stopped for you, but you left the company proper. At that time, film was at the height of its popularity, at least financially.
Yeah, we're doing quite well in 2000, 2001. I left October 1st, 2003.
So by that time when you were leaving, you left, I'm confident this is going okay.
Oh, no, we knew it was going down.
Oh, okay.
We knew it was going down. We were aware many years before that digital, because of the utility and the ability to store memory and use Photoshop, etc. We knew exactly what was going on.
So you knew the ship was sinking.
Yeah, yeah.
What was that like to watch from the outside?
Well, it wasn't much, you can see the train coming, okay? But you can't tell how far away it is, and you can't tell how fast it's moving.
Right.
So you know it's coming. We hadn't discontinued very much, but I had laid out plans for discontinuing things.
Wow, that's the stage you're at?
But there were plans.
Yeah.
Kodachrome. We were going to get rid of Kodachrome eventually because the volume for Kodachrome wasn't very good even in 2000.
Was much more popular.
Ektachrome was much more popular. Yeah. We could pretty much lay out based on volume and what the business was doing. Pretty much lay out what was going to happen, and in what order, and make a shot at the timing. Timing for Kodachrome came out just about what he had predicted.
Wow.
So you could see it coming, but there's not a whole lot you can do about it.
Yeah, that's wow. Well, what do you think about the current state of the film industry? Like, obviously you're aware of the resurgence. Its volume is not even remotely similar to your day, obviously, but
no,
it's...
let's see. For 120, I think they use one spooler a couple days a week. We had probably 10 or 12 spoolers, and for 220, we ran them 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
But, I mean, what is your opinion on the current state of the industry?
I'm amazed it still exists as much as it does.
Okay.
I don't know how long they can continue to survive. The volumes are so tiny.
Yeah.
I mean,
there's boutique companies that are servicing that for that
but
very
that's
reason.
black and white.
Yeah, definitely.
Black and white can survive.
Orwo is developing motion picture color film now, which is pretty amazing. Ferrania technically can make color film, although
they haven't.
They haven't, and we hope they will. But, I mean, so do you think Kodak is a part of the future of film, or do you think they're firmly the historical past?
No, I think it's all dependent, primarily dependent on the motion picture business.
Yeah, right.
The still business is tiny compared to the motion picture business.
The motion picture business is doing well right now.
They're making color negative film. They don't make any print materials. They used to make, well, we used to make typically 2,000 releases on a motion picture film.
Yeah.
Now they make 0. So as long as motion picture keeps active and the directors continue to shoot, that'll support the still film. But I don't believe that the volume of still is sufficient to keep the factory running.
Yeah, that's the indication I've gotten. So, on a positive note,
Well, as long as
I
motion
mean-
picture's healthy,
yeah,
but you need the motion picture. You need the motion picture volume.
Right.
Camera. You need origination film.
Yeah.
Print film doesn't do you much good.
right. Have you ever heard of Cinestill?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you used any of it?
No.
It's really interesting process. I mean, the removal of the remjet layer. Film looks incredible. But that's a good example of
Remjet's messy stuff.
Remjet's messy stuff. You heard it here first. So one last-ish thing I want to talk to you about is Ektachrome, because you worked with Ektachrome in its original state and then obviously discussed its revival with a lot of the current people there. So tell me a little bit about your history with Ektachrome and then what you think the current people had to do. I think it's a triumph that they brought it back.
I'm amazed they were successful, and they get kudos from me for that. I never thought they'd pull it off.
That's big praise.
I never thought they'd pull it off because, for 2 reasons. One, we had a whole research lab full of people to support if there was ever a problem to figure it out.
Yeah.
And most of those guys were my age and retired. Okay, pretty much all of them were gone by 2000. But by the time I retired in 2003, I retired about the same time. A couple
Yeah.
people lingered on. And you need incredible depth in technology to get all the parts, and all the parts have to come together. So the other thing that was difficult is the materials.
Yeah.
Starting materials were not available for all the different items they have to work, and they all have to work together. If one doesn't work well, the whole house of cards comes down. So, and I've shot the Ektachrome, and it looks very good.
I love it.
It certainly rivals,
G?
yeah, 100G. It's very, very close to 100G, and that's what they're trying to duplicate. 100G did very well, and it was a step,
Yeah.
It started with EPR and then went to EPP, and then there's Panther and a variety of Ektachrome films where each one built on the last up to G. But they were, as far as I can tell, they were successful. Whether they'll come out with anything else, I have no idea.
Yeah, I would love to see a little higher speed slide, because now slide's not being used in the way it was. Now it's being used as, your everyday shooter.
Well, there was never, 100 was always superior to 200 and 400.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So,
but I just think shooters would love to see a higher speed slide now.
I don't think you'll get a. I don't think you'll get a. Because I think they'll have to take too much of a compromise in quality.
Yeah.
200 was never particularly good. 400 was never particularly good. You're probably better off taking 100G or whatever and push it.
Yeah. What do you think about the overall current roster of film that Kodak offers? Like, do you see a blind spot or something you would like to see them try to do?
If cost is no object, I'd like to see technical pan again, actually.
Okay.
Technical pan, we could never we knew technical pan was going to go away when I retired. We knew, because the problem was it uses a special piece of equipment to make the emulsion.
Okay.
Not only does it take up space, but you have to maintain the equipment for a product you're only going to make a few times a year.
Yeah.
Some films like consumer Kodacolor would be made every day or a couple times a week.
Okay.
And when you do that, you're doing it frequently enough that you can keep very close control. When you only make a product once every 3 months, the people change, despite what anybody says, the raw materials change. Almost every batch is different than the previous.
Right.
Because something changed. So what you typically would do, even for a product you make every day, is you blend in new materials with the old materials so that the difference isn't particularly great.
Right.
When you make something every 3 months, that gets really tough. If you make it once a year, then it's a crapshoot every time, and you can almost guarantee you won't make it right the first time.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm a huge shooter of Polaroid 8x10, and they make that once every 2 years.
Oh yeah,
I mean, they've got one machine that does it, and you know.
the people change.
Yeah.
The people forget what they did,
Yeah.
and all the raw materials change, and the equipment is doing one of two things: it's just sitting there deteriorating, or it's being used for other things in which they're making modifications in the equipment. So you kind of can't win.
Right. No, I hear that. And that's Kodak having downsized where it's at. They're having trouble with supply chain. I mean, even beyond COVID, just the necessity to scale down.
Yeah, that's why I'm amazed. I'm amazed that they're able to. I would never have predicted when I retired that in 2020 they'd still be making film. I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought it was going to go to zero and they'd shut it down.
Well,
but they have kept.
We surprised you, Bob.
It.
Everyone still loves film, Bob.
Well, everyone's a small number.
I know, but it's growing every day. Even though it's I'm sure you know.
There's a survival rate that will continue.
Yes.
But it's just not what I'm.
I know. Okay,
we had factories, and I'll try to do this stuff that I had. We had factories in Rochester, Canada, Colorado, not Palo Alto. And our biggest problem was we couldn't make enough product. Every decade from 1890, Kodak added a major manufacturing site up until 2000. 1990 was building 38, 2000 was China. We kept the factories running 364 days. We usually shut down on Christmas. 364 days a year. But one of the biggest problems was balancing manufacturing between the various materials and the various factories.
Oh my God, I'm sure.
So there was something called the Green Book, which was the plan for the next year.
Okay.
And that told each factory how many square meters of which film they had to figure out how to make each year.
Right. And now that we're sort of at the end of our time here, Bob, you're a very modest person. I mean, you speak about everything as if like, whatever. But I do want to hear you reflect a little bit on what you're most proud of. What do you think is your legacy, or you know what?
I like my book.
The book.
I was glad I could do that. I felt I gave credit. I wanted to give credit to not only the people that I worked with, but also the people that had gone before us. So here's the book.
This is a nice book.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Incredible amount of work. Too much work. But the goal of the book was to document. Okay, here's the thing. Kodak was very secretive, appropriately. Mr. Eastman had been burned a few times by people taking information he provided and using it to their advantage and not his. So the company became very careful of guarding information at all levels. They did all sorts of crazy stuff, like chemicals would come in to the loading dock, they would be relabeled with a different name on them. Then they'd go to the shop floor and they'd be relabeled again. People in research would use one name for a chemical, but a different name would be used in the factory. And if they talked to each other, they never knew what each other was talking about.
That is wild.
People who worked in the film division were very seldom ever reassigned to the paper and vice versa. They were separate as though they worked for a separate company.
So this book is sort of a touchstone of melding these minds together in one place.
Yeah, but only at a relatively high level.
Yeah.
If I had estimated if I was going to write how everything was done, it'd probably be 10 times, maybe 100 times thicker, because there was so much detail that had to be paid attention to.
So the book you felt as you were creating it, and as it's now in its second version, you feel this is sort of your legacy now? That you were the mind that was trusted to do this?
Yeah, I was thankful to, I can't even say their names. I was thankful to a couple people at Kodak.
Redacted.
in the very highest of levels, who I don't credit in the book because they didn't want it to appear that this was an official Kodak publication. But they had confidence that I would do it and do it accurately. The book was reviewed by at least 50 Kodak people.
Wow.
It took 6 months.
You must
The
have
only
been
thing
like,
they did,
any revisions?
well, I got the manuscript back with all these Post-its,
Oh my God.
and then the higher up guys who read it said, the only thing we don't want you to do, we don't want you to show this and we don't want you to show that, but everything else is
Wow.
fine. That's sort of humble about it, but I'm kind of surprised, but that's a credit to all the people that
Sure.
read through it. I'm glad that, one generation taught the next generation. I was lucky that people were patient with me when I was young, and hopefully we passed it on to some of the people now the people that I had passed information on to,
Are passing it on to the next?
with one exception being T.J. Mooney, who's still there. I'm getting together next week, as a matter of fact, with some people that I worked with. And we're all thankful we were there when we were there.
Yes.
We're sorry that the business died down, but we have nothing to regret.
Yeah.
We're thankful that we had the opportunity to work there. There were great people to work with. Quality of the people was very good. The company had a strong culture that allowed you to get better. And I was just talking about this. If somebody got into a job where they weren't quite making it, they'd find another opportunity for them. So people didn't, unfortunately at the end, they got rid of people, but usually people got reassigned. So everybody was pretty competent at what they were doing.
Everybody was pretty competent at what they were doing.
Yeah.
Well, Bob, I want to speak on behalf of the film community despite your modesty, when your name comes up, we think of you, like I said, as the GOAT, greatest of all time. You're a legend, Bob.
Wow.
And I want you to know how revered you are.
Hardly.
No, it's true. And
All right.
I really appreciate you being on the show.
Oh, had to do it.
It's been an honor. You had to do it. Yeah,
That was
really,
great.
really no choice, Bob.
I was glad to do it.
Yes. All right. Well,
Thank you.
Thank you for watching. See you on the next one. All right, let's rip it.
The anticipation.
Yeah. Great spread.
Looks like a good spread.
Looks like a good spread.
Wow, nice.
Wow. That's going to be a good negative.
When we get in the corners to do the spread, you can deal with that.
Oh, yeah.
Look happy.
That's a
You look very pleased.
that's the best case scenario on that one.